Alex had never given much thought to the rules of his neighborhood. As a young professional, he had spent the last few years establishing his career and enjoying the peaceful suburban life he had always dreamed of. His home was a modest yet beautiful property, nestled in a quiet cul-de-sac. The driveway, a long stretch of concrete, provided direct access to his garage, and that was all that mattered, or so he thought. The HOA had always been a quiet presence in the background of his life, sending occasional newsletters, reminding homeowners of lawn maintenance schedules, and enforcing their usual regulations. Most of the time, Alex barely noticed their rules. But then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, crisp and official, sealed in an envelope with the HOA's emblem stamped across the front. Alex opened it over his morning coffee, expecting it to be another friendly reminder about the neighborhood's yard standards. Instead, his eyes widened as he read the first line. This is a formal notice regarding unauthorized use of common property. Confused, Alex continued reading. According to the letter, the HOA claimed that the road leading to Alex's driveway was part of their jurisdiction. They accused him of violating rules regarding access and parking. Specifically, they cited his driveway, which was located at the end of a road they claimed ownership of. His mind raced. The road was clearly private. It wasn't a public thoroughfare. In fact, there was a gate at the entrance of the cul-de-sac, and the road was used exclusively by the homeowners of a small community. No one else had access, and no one had ever tried to claim it. The letter continued, outlining an immediate fine of $500 and a warning that further infractions would result in escalating penalties. They demanded that Alex remove any permanent structures, like the small decorative fence near the driveway, within a week or face additional charges. At the bottom of the letter was the typical legal jargon, but the message was clear. The HOA was asserting its power, and Alex was their target. Alex wasn't one to back down from a challenge, but he knew that he had to approach the situation carefully. He spent the rest of the day reading through the HOA's governing documents, trying to understand their legal reach. At first glance, nothing in the bylaws even mentioned the specific claim they were making over the road. Alex decided to consult a lawyer. The next morning, he called Rebecca Lawson, a local attorney specializing in property rights. After explaining the situation, she agreed to take a look at the documents and advise him. Rebecca met Alex in his living room the following week, armed with a stack of legal papers. After reviewing the HOA's claims, she sighed and looked up at Alex. "These bylaws are vague," she said. "It's not clear how they could assert ownership of a private road that is not shared with other communities. But that's typical of HOA documents, designed to be convoluted and open to interpretation. I suggest we dig deeper into property records." Alex nodded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He didn't want to lose his home over some bureaucratic dispute, but he wasn't going to let them take what was rightfully his. Rebecca and Alex spent the next few days poring over county property records. It became clear that the HOA had made a significant overreach. While they owned some of the common areas within the neighborhood, the road leading to Alex's house wasn't one of them. It was entirely privately owned, and Alex had the legal right to maintain access to it. Armed with this knowledge, Alex felt more confident. He scheduled a meeting with the HOA board to discuss the issue and attempt to resolve the situation without conflict. The HOA board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. Alex arrived early, feeling a mix of determination and frustration. He was ready to confront the board and challenge their claims head-on. As he walked into the meeting room, the members of the HOA board were already seated at a long table. They looked at him with an air of authority, each one dressed in professional attire, suits and ties, as if they had everything figured out. Alex took a deep breath, walked to the front, and laid down a copy of the property records on the table. "I've reviewed the documents," Alex began, his voice steady. "The road leading to my driveway is not part of any common property. It's private, and I have the legal rights to it." The HOA president, a middle-aged woman named Margaret, leaned forward with a smug smile. "Alex, you must be mistaken. The road is part of our jurisdiction. You should have received proper notice when you moved in. Our rules are clear." "I received your notice," Alex replied, his voice unwavering. "And I'm telling you that it's wrong. You don't have authority over this road." Margaret exchanged a look with the other board members before she spoke again, her tone condescending. "We have the power to enforce these rules. If you don't comply, we'll have no choice but to take further action." "Further action?" Alex asked, raising an eyebrow. "What exactly does that mean?" "We will impose fines. And if you continue to resist, we'll take legal action to reclaim the property," Margaret threatened. Alex leaned back in his chair. He had expected this, but hearing it out loud made his blood boil. He had had enough. Alex knew the HOA wasn't going to back down easily, but he wasn't about to let them intimidate him. After the meeting, he met with Rebecca again, determined to take the next step. "We need to fight back," Alex said, his mind already racing with ideas. "I'm not just going to let them bully me into submission." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I'm going to buy the road," Alex replied, his voice full of resolve. Alex's plan was risky, but it was the only way to regain control of the situation. After doing some research, he discovered that if a private property owner could prove that a road was essential to their property, they could petition the local government to buy the road and take control of it. The process was complex, but Alex felt ready. Rebecca helped him draft the necessary paperwork and began reaching out to local officials. The process would take several months, but Alex was prepared to see it through. As Alex moved forward with his plan, the HOA's response became more aggressive. They started sending more threatening letters and even attempted to contact local authorities to block Alex's efforts. But Alex was relentless. With the support of Rebecca and a growing network of homeowners, he pressed on. As Alex's plan to buy the road and close it off took shape, he began to realize that this wouldn't just be a personal battle. The more he shared his story with neighbors and friends, the more he realized how many people were dissatisfied with the HOA's overreach. Many homeowners felt stifled by the rules and restrictions that seemed to come out of nowhere, often with little explanation or concern for the individual property rights of homeowners. A few of Alex's neighbors, especially those who had been issued fines for trivial matters, came forward to express their support. Some even offered to assist them with the costs, seeing this as an opportunity to challenge the HOA's authority once and for all. One neighbor, John, who lived 2 doors down, had been living under the HOA's thumb for years. He had been fined for painting his front door a color that the HOA deemed too vibrant. He had reluctantly paid the fine, but was left with a bitter taste in his mouth. John reached out to Alex one evening after hearing about his plan. "I've had enough," John said, his face determined. "I want in. I'll help however I can." Alex was surprised at first, but welcomed John's enthusiasm. The support was exactly what he needed. Together, they started organizing small community meetings, speaking with other neighbors and rallying support. The more they talked to others, the more they realized that many people were fed up with the HOA's micromanaging ways. Rebecca worked tirelessly on Alex's behalf, filing the necessary petitions and getting the ball rolling. It wasn't an easy process. There were legal battles, arguments with city council members, and even a few threats from the HOA board members, who began to grow desperate. They were realizing that Alex wasn't going to back down easily. One particular incident stood out. As Alex and Rebecca sat in a city council meeting, ready to present their case for buying the road, Margaret, who had been acting as the HOA president, showed up fuming with rage. She stormed into the meeting room, demanding that the council members reject Alex's petition. "You can't let this man steal what belongs to the entire community," Margaret yelled, her face flushed with anger. "The road belongs to all of us, and we won't let him shut it off for his own selfish purposes." Alex stood up unflinching. "This isn't about selfishness, Margaret. This is about taking control of what's rightfully mine. You don't have the legal authority to dictate what I do with my property, and you've been abusing your power for too long." Rebecca stood by his side, presenting the legal documents that proved the road was not part of the HOA's jurisdiction. The council members, who had grown tired of the HOA's constant interference, took notice. They asked a few questions, listened to both sides, and then announced that they would deliberate and make a decision within a few weeks. As the legal battle dragged on, the tension in the neighborhood reached a boiling point. The HOA continued to send out threatening letters, telling homeowners that they were under the HOA's authority and warning them about any attempts to defy their rules. But Alex's supporters began to grow in numbers. His fight was no longer just about one person standing against the HOA. It was about freedom, community, and property rights. Neighbors who once kept to themselves began to speak out against the HOA's restrictive policies, joining Alex's cause. The HOA tried to divide the neighborhood by playing on people's fears. They painted Alex as a troublemaker who was disrupting the peace and harmony of the community. But Alex's message was simple. The HOA was overstepping its bounds, and people had the right to stand up to them. Months passed, and the court dates grew closer. Tensions between the HOA and Alex's supporters escalated further. But just when things seemed like they couldn't get any more heated, a surprising development took place. A local news outlet, Channel 5 News, caught wind of the story. They reached out to Alex for an interview, intrigued by his stance against the HOA. The story was too compelling to ignore. A homeowner standing up against a powerful HOA that had been infringing on the rights of everyday citizens. The news team arrived at Alex's house one Friday afternoon. The camera crew set up in front of his decorated home, and Alex stood tall, ready to speak his truth. "I'm not trying to make enemies," Alex began in the interview. "I'm just trying to protect my home. The HOA doesn't own this road, and they don't own my driveway. This is about respecting property rights, not about who can dictate how we live." The broadcast aired that evening, and before long, the entire community was talking about Alex's fight. The HOA board, which had once enjoyed almost uncontested control, was now facing public scrutiny like never before. The court date was set, and Alex, along with Rebecca, stood prepared. As the day arrived, a crowd of supporters gathered outside the courthouse. The media was there, eager to cover the historic case. This wasn't just about one man fighting an HOA. It was about challenging an institution that many felt had too much power over personal lives. Inside the courtroom, the judge listened carefully to both sides. The HOA's lawyers argued that the road was part of their jurisdiction, citing vague bylaw language in their authority over common areas. Alex's legal team, led by Rebecca, countered that the road was clearly private property, and the HOA had no legal claim to it. After hours of deliberation, the judge announced a decision. Alex had won. The judge ruled that the road was indeed private property, and the HOA had no legal right to claim it or dictate its use. The courtroom erupted in applause, and outside, Alex's supporters cheered. The victory was sweet, but Alex knew this was only the beginning. With this win, Alex didn't just reclaim his property. He had struck a blow against the overreach of HOAs everywhere. With the court ruling in his favor, Alex moved forward with his original plan to buy the road. The HOA could no longer challenge his ownership. Through a series of legal negotiations with the local government, Alex acquired the road and closed it off to the public permanently. Alex made sure to install a beautiful, sturdy gate at the entrance of the road, symbolizing the end of HOA interference. He also made sure the road was clearly marked as private property, preventing anyone from accessing it without his permission. As time went on, Alex's victory became a symbol of resilience and property rights. The HOA was forced to revise many of its rules, knowing that their reign of authority had been challenged. Residents in the neighborhood felt more empowered, and many began to question the legitimacy of certain restrictions that had long been in place. Alex's home became a symbol of hope for homeowners across the country. They knew that if one person could take on the HOA and win, anyone could. Years later, Alex's fight against the HOA became a legend in property rights activism. He continued to speak out on behalf of homeowners everywhere, advocating for personal freedom and the importance of standing up against overreaching institutions. Alex's story inspired a movement that spread far and wide, one that would ensure that the power of HOAs would never go unchecked again. Alex thought that after the victory in court, things would settle down. He was wrong. The victory had made waves beyond the boundaries of his small suburban neighborhood. The media frenzy around his case was only the beginning. Alex's battle with the HOA became a symbol of resistance in the broader national conversation about homeowners' rights and the unchecked power of associations. Local news stations, bloggers, and even political commentators began to cover the story. Soon, Alex was receiving calls from people all over the country, asking for advice and offering support. Some shared their own struggles with tyrannical HOAs, while others simply want to congratulate him for standing up for his rights. As the months went by, Alex started receiving invitations to speak at local town halls, conferences, and even to appear on national news segments. His fight had sparked something larger, and he realized that this wasn't just about a driveway or a road. It was about freedom, autonomy, and accountability. He began to understand that he had unintentionally become the face of a growing movement. At the urging of his lawyer, Rebecca, Alex eventually took his story to a wider audience. The two of them launched a nonprofit organization aimed at educating homeowners about their rights and helping them challenge unfair HOA practices. They call it Homeowners United, and its mission was simple: empower individuals to take back control of their homes and communities from overreaching HOA boards. The organization quickly gained traction, offering resources, legal advice, and support for those seeking to challenge HOA policies. Alex traveled across the country, attending rallies and speaking at events. The organization also helped homeowners organize petitions, attend city council meetings, and even file lawsuits in extreme cases. The most significant impact of Homeowners United was in educating people about the dark side of HOAs, the often arbitrary and unfair enforcement of rules that left homeowners feeling powerless. Alex shared stories of people who had been fined for trivial matters, such as the height of their grass or the color of their mailbox, with no regard for their personal lives or circumstances. As the Homeowners United movement grew, Alex and his team started to see real changes in the way HOAs operated. They began working with legislators who were interested in creating better oversight of HOAs and ensuring that the interests of homeowners were protected. In 2025, the movement achieved a major legislative victory: the Homeowners Rights Protection Act. This new law required all HOA boards to be more transparent about their financial dealings and property ownership, while also creating an oversight board to ensure that decisions made by HOAs were fair and justified. The law also provided a clear process for homeowners to challenge decisions they felt were unfair. The law wasn't perfect. It didn't eliminate HOAs altogether, nor did it guarantee that homeowners would always win, but it made significant strides in preventing HOAs from abusing their power. The passage of the bill marked the beginning of a new era for homeowners across the country. Despite the national attention, Alex was committed to keeping his feet on the ground. His life had changed, but his home, his driveway, was still his sanctuary. He kept a low profile in his neighborhood and spent most of his time working with the organization and helping others. Alex's efforts paid off. As time passed, the HOA that had once sought to control him began to lose influence in the neighborhood. Homeowners who had once been too afraid to speak out started to find their voices. They came together to discuss new ideas for the community, ideas that focus on shared responsibility, freedom of choice, and respect for personal property. The atmosphere in the neighborhood shifted from one of fear and compliance to one of collaboration and mutual respect. Alex's victory had not only changed his own life, it had changed the lives of everyone in his neighborhood. The HOA, realizing that its reign was coming to an end, tried desperately to retain its power. Margaret, the HOA president who had once been so confident in her control, started to show signs of desperation. She and the board made attempts to tighten their grip on the neighborhood. They issued new rules about fences, parking, and even the color of exterior paint. But their efforts were met with resistance at every turn. Homeowners no longer feared the HOA's fines. They fought back by forming a community council, and through legal channels, they were able to challenge many of the new rules the HOA attempted to impose. At one particularly contentious meeting, Margaret stood before the council, her hands shaking. "We have a responsibility to maintain property values," she argued, but the homeowners had heard it all before. They knew the truth. This wasn't about maintaining property values. It was about control. Alex stepped forward, standing tall in the back of the room. "You've lost this battle, Margaret. The power is in the hands of the people now." The board members, who had once enforced their rule without question, now found themselves questioning their very existence. The tide had turned, and they knew it. With the HOA's authority significantly weakened, Alex's neighborhood began to flourish. People painted their homes in vibrant colors, planted gardens, and built personalized fences and gates that reflected their tastes and lifestyles. There were fewer rules, but there was more freedom, and with that freedom came a sense of community. Alex continued to fight for the rights of homeowners everywhere, but he had found peace in his own neighborhood. He had achieved more than just winning his battle with the HOA. He had helped bring about true change for future generations of homeowners. Years passed, and Alex's name became synonymous with the fight for homeowners' rights. His story was told in classrooms, legal journals, and documentaries. His work had inspired countless individuals to challenge oppressive HOA practices, and his advocacy had sparked a national conversation about property rights. One afternoon, as Alex sat on his front porch, watching the sun set over his quiet street, he reflected on the long journey he had undertaken. The road that had once been claimed by the HOA was now entirely his, and he had transformed it into something much more meaningful. He thought back to those early days, the confusing letters, the tension-filled HOA meetings, and the fear of losing everything. But in the end, Alex had fought for his freedom and had won, and that, he realized, was the true meaning of home. Homeowners United continued to thrive under Alex's leadership. The organization expanded to multiple states and gained even more influence, supporting homeowners facing similar battles across the nation. But what mattered most to Alex wasn't the organization's growth. It was the knowledge that it had helped create a legacy that would continue to protect homeowners for generations to come. Alex had reclaimed his driveway, but he had also reclaimed a sense of control that many thought was lost forever. And in doing so, he had reminded everyone that when it comes to your home, you are the one who should hold the keys.